While I was gone, yes, it's true, there were some big news items that happened in college football, in college athletics, even some would say. And frankly, I had grown tired of talking about this, so it really didn't hurt my feelings too much that this happened while I was gone. Rob hit me. He said, "What was it like seeing one of the biggest college football stories of all time being broken while you were out of the country on your honeymoon?" And I'm not quite sure what Rob's talking about there because, to the best of my knowledge, I covered this. As the news broke, did I not, Bradley and Jesse? I covered this as best I could. I cut in straight from St. Lucia. Look, right here. I covered it. What do you think I was doing here, Rob? If you're listening on podcast, I'm covering my heart out of this story. That was about the extent of my thoughts on it, Rob. I couldn't have cared less. I know it's a big story. I understand it has huge implications for the future of college football, but you got to understand when your draw to this game is the on-field nature of the game, and you don't really truly enjoy watching the sport be played in a courtroom, as it has been very, very much so over the past, I don't know, several years. I didn't mind being out of touch, out of pocket, if you will, but I did have some thoughts, and I'm not going to necessarily break them down like Dellinger would or like Marcelo would. I mean, those guys have done phenomenal jobs covering this stuff. I'm saying I'm glad, candidly speaking, I don't have to cover it. Ross Dellinger was in a courtroom or some hearing again today. He's been in courtrooms and like hearings more than pro wrestlers used to be in the ring in the 80s. They talk about working 300 plus days a year. I mean, that's your life right now. If you're covering college football from a strictly journalistic standpoint, gross, terrible. So they're getting paid for it. I'm not expecting you to feel sorry for these people, but man, like eventually, aren't we supposed to touch some grass or at least some synthetic turf? Hopefully grass. I'll tell you what I didn't understand. Obviously my phone, the iJosh was lit up when I had cell phones and Wi-Fi service down there, but I did not understand, Rob, to answer your question, a lot of the reaction. I have noticed, as has been pointed out on the show, that a lot of the people who are paying attention to college football hardcore this time of year are people who love the sport like we do. And the people who love the sport the most usually are the first to find flaws in the sport. And I've kind of made that analogous to a city council meeting where it doesn't matter how great the city is. If you turn on a city council meeting and your only perception of that town is what you see in the city council meeting, you'll think that town is terrible because no one goes to the city council meeting to talk about how great the city is. They go there to complain. Well, likewise, no one hops on the internet in May or June to talk about college football and how great it is. They're only talking about this and that, and they're nitpicking, and that's okay, man. I do it. I'm guilty of it. But if you've been listening to that for the past weeks and months, it's been kind of exhausting. So I did notice that when this news broke, and all the news was, I guess we're not burying the lead because it's a week-old story now, but I mean, the news was that the House settlement got passed by Judge Claudia Wilkin out in the Ninth Circuit Court. And now you've got revenue sharing, and allegedly you've got some rules, some guidelines, the mythical guardrails that we've been looking for so long. Hey, at least the language is written into this. We'll see how enforceable it is. But I'll tell you, my biggest sort of singular takeaway, if there was one, was I didn't understand some of the reactions. I didn't understand the reactions of people who looked at it and said, oh, the House settlement's been passed. The revenue sharing era is here. There goes college athletics and college football as we know it. How? And I asked several of my buddies this because, I mean, look, most of my buddies kind of love the sport for the same reasons I love the sport. We don't always agree on everything, but I was listening to some of them talk, and I really think they were just complaining to hear themselves complain. Because best I can tell, we just had a situation for several years where everyone complained about what? Lack of rules, lack of structure, lack of guardrails. It's the Wild West, transfer portals out of control, NIL really masquerading as just outright pay for play is out of control. These are widely shared complaints, are they not? And so that's been happening for a long time. And so I'm looking at the language in the House settlement, And I didn't understand a lot of the reaction. For the life of me, I couldn't understand people who love college football, the classical version of it, and have been complaining about all that's wrong with it. And they looked and they said, oh, there goes college football. What, with the House settlement? There goes college football? You got a cap on spending now. You introduced more structure. You introduced rules. You introduced at least incentive to greatly reduce roster churn. Therefore, the portal from this point moving forward should be fractionally as out of control and busy as it has been. They re-elevated in the interim the concept of evaluation and relationship building as being the cornerstones of the recruiting process. And you listen to that and say, Josh, that's not true. Everyone's being paid. What do you think revenue sharing is? No, I didn't say they weren't being paid. And if I really wanted to go bad faith argument mode on you, I could do what most people do and say, oh, they were always being paid. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that in the interest of ethics around here. But my point is, it's not about whether kids are going to be paid or not. And I think it's a pretty broadly held consensus that most of us believe they should be paid or compensated at least somewhat. I think most people's rub was, well, right now, if you've got one billionaire in your back pocket, then they can just run circles around everyone, and there's no rules and this and that, and you're getting poached from one roster to go to another roster, and it's just Wild West free agency all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, now you've got rules. Whether they're enforceable or not, I'll get to in a second. But you've got rules. You've actually got a set of standards that everyone has to adhere to, and you've got a revenue sharing structure that everyone has to adhere to. And when I look at that, I was down at LSU last year. I was actually, I was outside of Brian Kelly's office talking to someone else, but Yael's been there forever. So I'm in Yael's office talking to her, and Brian Kelly walks by. I was talking to him, and he said, man, I really hope that we get that new structure in place, because I love a world where evaluation matters and relationship development matters in recruiting. And what he meant by that is not, I want to get to a world where kids don't get paid. What he's talking about, and what literally every other coach that you meet with is talking about, sans a few, is we want to get to a world where the kids are getting paid, but everyone's kind of singing out of the same hymnal. So it's not bidding war season. It's recruiting season. And Clemson's going to offer me $225 a year, and Texas is going to offer me $238 a year, and Ole Miss may go all the way up to $250. But there's not this wide gulf in offers to where if I wanted to go to Bama, but Southern Cal comes in and offers 3 times the amount, I'm going to go to Southern Cal, #business decision. That's not the way recruiting's really going to feel as much anymore if these rules are enforceable. So then, if everyone's sort of able to offer roughly the same amount, then what matters again? What matters again is your ability to evaluate, your ability to develop once they get on campus, but your ability to develop relationships before they're on campus. And dare I say, recruiting may retake on some of the flavor that recruiting used to have. But what is that piece of paper? The multi-billion-dollar question in all of this, I wrote it down here, just in case I would forget this sentence. It's very complicated. Will they really be able to enforce it? Told you it was complicated. Easy to memorize, but that's it. Hey, quick timeout. Check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, make sure you do. It's free. It doesn't obligate you or sign you up for anything. It just helps us keep the channel free. All right, back to the show. That's actually all that matters with any rule that's ever been written in the history of mankind. Will they be able to enforce this? Because, obviously with this whole revenue sharing thing, NIL doesn't go away, but the way the rules have been written is any NIL deal above $600, I think is the number, goes through this clearinghouse. And essentially, if Pate State wants to pay Jesse over $600, I got to prove that Jesse's real value for the service that he's going to provide in exchange for that money matches what he would get on the open market. Now, of course, this is a situation ripe for lawsuits. They are going to come. The multi-billion-dollar question therein is, well, if you've got a rogue program out there that looks at these rules and says, good luck enforcing that, and they just still go rogue and they offer well above and beyond, either through straight-up cash or end-around NIL deals, how are you going to enforce it? Well, I don't know. That's why I'm sort of leaning back in this chair a little bit and taking a wait and see approach. I hope they can. I've been very clear on my wish with all of this, and that is I hope we get to this place as soon as possible, because I am looking out, and my self-interest is college football. There's no one program I'm rooting for. There is no one person I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for college football. College football is at its best not when there's full competitive balance, because there never will be. I mean, that's sunshine, rainbow, unicorn land. There's not that. But if you have an entire landscape where you've got the revenue share and then you got the NIL sort of as a cherry on top, but by and large, you've got rules and they're able to be enforced, well, that's a win for college football fans. And it places the emphasis back on recruiting and then back on development and then ultimately back on the football field instead of the courtroom. Imagine that. That'd be refreshing. But I think it's all about fear. You ask, well, will they be able to enforce this? Well, it depends on how terrified people are. I don't know how many of you have been through South Georgia. Thomasville, for example. There's a highway that runs through Thomasville, US 19. Anytime I went to a Florida State game, if I were going to go back to Columbus, Georgia, I'd have to come through Thomasville. Notorious speed trap. And the reason why, when that sign says 30 miles an hour, you don't dare drive over 30 is because you're scared that you'll get pulled over, because they do it every day down there. Now, conversely, there are other places in the state of Georgia where you know that you can disregard the speed limit sign. They don't ever patrol this area. It's the same way with rules and enforcement in college football. So, Bradley, throw up that piece from the Dellinger story. This is a very short paragraph, but this is what it's about here. This is from Ross Dellinger a few days ago. He said, an enforcement staff is expected to be hired to investigate and enforce rules related to cap circumvention, tampering, etc., and are charged with levying stiff penalties. Violators may be subject to multi-game coaching suspensions, reductions in a school's revenue share pool, as well as reductions in allowed transfers and significant school fines. Keep that up, Bradley. So, if you're able to do this, if everyone looks around the room, and I can promise you this is happening right now, those league meetings, everyone says the right thing, whether they're in Destin or they're in Amelia Island, wherever these, in Los Angeles for the Big Ten, all these coaches get in the room and they agree with each other. We want rules. We want proper governance. We want structure. If everyone else will play by the rules, we will too. They all say that. Okay, so what you do if you're Greg Sankey or Tony Petiti or any of these conference commissioners, you get in the room and you make sure everyone agrees. You all say you want structure, right? Yeah, you get all the heads nodding. Okay, and do you agree that if everyone else is playing by the rules, you will too? Yeah. You're going to get consensus approval there. They're all going to agree to it on the surface. And your athletic directors need to be read in on this. Your head coaches need to be read in on it. University presidents need to be read in on it. And then the next question needs to be, okay, well, if everyone's on board with this, then you won't mind us adopting and then enforcing really, really rigid, stiff penalties for anyone who runs afoul of this, right? Get them all to agree to it. Get them all to say yes verbally, just like if I'm sitting on an exit row in a plane, they don't take the head nod. I've got to say yes. Yes, I agree. So everyone, I don't care what school you're at, you need to agree to it. And then if what Ross Dellinger wrote here is actually enforceable, if you know that when you run afoul of this stuff, you got a multi-game suspension coming, or your revenue sharing pool is going to be reduced where you're not able to offer what your competitors are able to offer, or you're not able to take as many transfers, or your school gets a significant fine, that right there is the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign with 3 cops on the side of the road. That's the difference. If you're able to enforce it, that's the difference. Now, part 2 of this is, well, how do you decide whether you're able to enforce it? Well, therein lies not the problem, but the unfinished business in all this. And it's something that I'm following really closely. I don't talk about it a lot on the show because it's kind of boring, but I'm following this very closely because they're fighting to get a bill that grants them limited antitrust exemption. And don't worry, if you're a sophomore at Troy University and you don't know what that means, it just means writing rules that Congress then gives you the authority to enforce. And otherwise, you wouldn't have that because it would be illegal. So that's what college football collectively is looking for right now. Now, you're going to get a lot of players' rights advocates that fight against that, and that's okay. As I said before, and I'll say a million times more, I care about what's in the best interest of the overall product of college football. And what's best for the overall product of college football is to have the players being compensated, check. Fairly, check. Sometimes above and beyond fairly at this point, check. Having rules, okay, question mark right now, and the ability to enforce them, also a question mark. And so they got part one done. They got the House settlement. If they develop the ability through Congress to enforce this, that's really when you've got groundbreaking substantive change. Until then, you're just going to get a lot of battles in the courtroom. I mean, here's how big a joke this is right now. I'll just move on because I'm not going to name names. Because I'm really not even educated enough on this stuff to fight the battle if people challenge me on it, candidly. But I know of legal types who spoke out against anyone who pushed back on the House settlement. They're advocating for the House settlement. Don't get in the way of progress. The House settlement is going to save college athletics. And these same people had female athletes lined up, ready to challenge the Title IX portion of the House settlement the day it was settled, the day it was agreed upon. And so you do have people whose lifeblood, whose income depends on drama and depends on unrest in the world of college athletics, and those people have a vested interest in making sure that the tornado keeps spinning. I don't really care what they think about my opinion. I care about what you think, and what we think. I would say to a supermajority consensus is, yeah, we want rules and we want people to be able to enforce them. Kids are going to make a ton of money either way. I'd strongly encourage you to listen to Christy Dosh, who covers this very well. She also teaches down at Florida on this very subject. I was listening to her the other day. She said, I teach about NIL and about the potential employment model in college athletics, and she said, it's so funny when you explain what being an employee would actually mean versus maybe collective bargaining, but not under the employment model. She said 100% of players say, I don't want to be an employee. They're right. It's so funny. That's the irony in all this. You got a bunch of quote unquote players' rights advocates that are pushing for the employment model. And once they're educated on it, almost no players want the employment model because they realize they have never had it, nor will they ever have it better than they've got it right now. And I'm of the belief that you do not have to have the employment model to collectively bargain this stuff. I think there are very smart people in the room that can accomplish one without the other. I do actually think that's the common ground that athletes, their representation, and conference commissioners will arrive at. So I do think they'll eventually get that done. I just don't feel like wasting any more time talking about it.